Now, Sports Talk with Broads. Here's Hunter Brody.
The Sixers fall for the first time at home this season to the Miami Heat of all teams. Yes, that's right. Jimmy Butler comes into South Philadelphia and leaves with a victory. I'm sure he's feeling great right now. There are so many things that bother me in this one. I can comprehend that they fought back and they battled and they were stealing balls late out of the inbounds and they were hitting big shots. They fought. There's no denying that they stayed into the game no matter how ugly it was, and there is value in that. But I'm not satisfied as a whole because throughout the 48 minutes, I didn't see good enough basketball for my liking. There is so much to discuss. But before we do, I need to let you know how you can save money when buying tickets to games. If you use the promo code BROADS at SeatGeek's checkout page, you get $20 off of your total purchase, which is free parking, free food, free beer. It's a no-brainer to use the promo code BROADS today. So we have to start with the zone, right? I mean, the zone shut down the Sixers, and that is disgusting. This isn't Michigan State basketball. It's not Duke. It's not UNC. It's not Gonzaga, Ohio State, ASU, Arizona. It's not college basketball. That should never be effective in the NBA. The way the Sixers played, specifically in that second quarter where they stood around, they didn't really attack anything. It's disgusting. For the Heat to go on a 27-7 run to end the first half, for them to score 37 points in that second quarter, it's not allowed. It's unacceptable. It's a joke. Now you look at the head coach and say, Brett Brown, you need to stop that from happening. That is your job. You need to adjust. You need to switch things around. You need to call timeout and say, we are doing something different and dial up something different because that wasn't okay to stand around. And then guess what happens? When the Sixers miss shots, they weren't getting the rebound. They weren't getting second chance opportunities because they're standing around the perimeter. When you look at the Miami Heat, they out-rebounded the Sixers tonight. Now, real quick on Brett Brown. This was a bad loss. And of course, all the Brett Brown haters come out and say, he's embarrassing, get him out of this city, I told you he can't coach. Then I get some tweets shot at me. Broads, are you defending him tonight? What do you think about Brett now? He had a bad basketball game. Brett Brown had a really bad basketball game. I did not like really anything that he did. With that being said, though, it was pretty quiet over the last 2+ weeks when he won 13 of 15 games. So he puts together this tremendous stretch. They beat the Raptors, the Nuggets, the Celtics in Boston. He has a bad game at home, and once again, keep in mind, I am saying he had a bad game at home, and now it's automatically he's embarrassing, he's pathetic, he sucks. I just don't understand how the logic works. It's very reactionary to one game, because he has been really solid over the last 2 weeks or so. It was a bad game. Nobody's denying it. When you look at the back end of this game, there was a 14-2 push by the Sixers, and then Joel Embiid ended up, I don't know what he was trying to do, maybe throw a lob pass when there were 3 men on him, and he was spinning around with his pivot foot. It was a turnover. Heat makes a 3, and then that kind of settled down the game a bit, and the Sixers did not continue their push. But then Josh Richardson tried to jack up a 3. Joel Embiid gets the offensive board, puts it back up for 2. Ben Simmons steals the inbound, gives it to Embiid. He ends up putting it up. On the other side, Brett Brown challenged a foul. Now, keep in mind the Heat challenged one earlier, and it got overturned. Now, this costed the Sixers their last timeout. This part didn't bother me because it wasn't really a foul. Now, I didn't expect them to overturn it. It was very questionable based off of what we have seen so far in the NBA. I'm saying it's questionable because I've seen so far them overturn or not overturn way worse things before. So just based off of what I've seen the NBA call, that's why I'm saying it was questionable. It clearly, to me, wasn't a foul whatsoever, and I knew that, but I didn't think that they would overturn it. But it was worth a shot because of the timing, because of the score, and because they already overturned one in the favor of the Miami Heat. Now, of course, they kept it as called on the floor. Jimmy Butler went to the line and the game moved on. But that costed the Sixers a timeout, and late in the game, it played a factor. Tobias Harris hits a 3. It's a 2-point game, and nobody fouls. So there is a disconnect between the coach and the players on the court at that time. You had the guys looking over at Brett Brown, and he's making the signal, foul, foul, foul. Well, they wasted 20 seconds on the clock. That stuff cannot happen. Really, that's so brutal. That's so hard to watch. It's sickening. We are talking about NBA players. They should know the time on the clock. They should know the circumstance. They should know what they need to do in those moments. What ends up happening is Miami misses both free throws and the Sixers have a chance. Now, this is the most disturbing part of the game for me. Well, maybe not. Maybe it's the second most disturbing. Because the first was not being able to beat the zone. The shots were not falling, but then you need to figure out a different game plan. If your shots aren't falling against the zone, you got to figure something out. Penetrate, drive. You can't just be standing around and waiting for those 3-point looks and then missing them. Something needs to change. But let's move on, because that was the first thing that bothered me. The second was Ben Simmons at the end of the game. He had Kendrick Nunn on him. I thought Kendrick Nunn did a good job of sliding over when Ben was pushing down the floor with the shot, with the game clock expiring in a 2-point game. Ben Simmons is 6'10". He's way stronger than him. He's way more physical. He's more athletic. He's a better basketball player. Take him to the damn rack. Take him to the damn rack. There's no excuse. You have 8 inches on this guy. You are a more dominant player. You need to be aggressive and go hard to the rim in that moment. Instead, he stops. He kicks it out to Al Horford, who misses a 3. The 3 wasn't falling all night long, and I didn't really love the look by Al Horford. It wasn't wide open, but it wasn't insanely contested either. It was somewhere in between. I just didn't love it. Now, I saw some hilarious memes on Twitter about how if he was in a Boston Celtics jersey, there was no doubt that was going all in, nothing but net, swoosh, and the crowd goes quiet because, of course, he'd be on the Sixers at that point. But you're not wrong, right? I mean, Al Horford, we've seen that happen against the Sixers so many times where we look at Al Horford and say, how was he making all these shots? That's one of those Boston Celtics against the Sixers shots that Al Horford would have drained with his eyes closed. I'm disappointed in Ben Simmons. Now, there's other still frame shots out there of Josh Richardson not cutting to the basket in that moment, and it's so hard to justify off of a still frame because you can maybe move it 1 second later and the frame completely changes the scenario. But there was a moment where he could have maybe cut backdoor. My point is this, I'm more frustrated with Ben Simmons in that moment. Now, I'm not saying Ben Simmons had a bad game overall. He had 17 points, 6 and 6, 2 blocks, a steal. I didn't think he had a bad game. He had a bad second quarter along with Joel Embiid as well, and we will discuss Joel Embiid. But I need to see more out of Ben in that moment. I'm sorry, when you're going up against a 6'2 guard like that, and you have full speed, and the game is on the line, and the clock is going down, and it's a 2-point game, you got to go to the rim. Now, I'm not saying, because there are a lot of fans out there, Sixers fans, that, why are you going for 3? There's no reason to go for 3, tie the game. If it's there, I'm not saying I'm anti-3-pointer. If Tobias Harris is wide open for 3, if Josh Richardson is wide open for 3, and I'm not even saying Al Horford can't take a 3 if he's wide open. I don't think he was wide open, and that's the difference. But in that scenario, just based off of what occurred in that moment, I need to see Ben Simmons be aggressive and take that all the way to the hoop. So it bothers me, and it really makes me look at his game totally different because I didn't think he played bad overall. But when you come up small there, it hurts me. It hurts me. That's the way I saw it. There are some people defending Ben's decision to hit Al Horford because he was open and he just missed it. There are some people claiming that Tobias Harris has to come to the ball and get the ball out of Ben's hands. With the way Ben was running down the floor and running up the court full speed, if I'm a player on the team with him, I say, okay, Ben, go ahead, take it. Take it to the rack. Once I see him running that fast, take it to the rack. But he stopped the dribble, passed out, and the rest is history. So, they were in it. They were in it to the end, which is crazy based off of how ugly it was. But it still doesn't feel any better to me. Now let's get to Joel Embiid. Not good enough. Now you look at the finishing stat line, 22 and 19. He was minus 11. And at some point in the game, later in the fourth quarter, he was minus 23 with 4 field goal attempts. What? For Joel Embiid, stat lines can be misleading because he's just so big and he's so obnoxious. When you see a stat line of 22 and 19 without watching the game, you don't realize that it wasn't really a good game. So you had the moment with Charles Barkley and Shaq. You're the best big man. You can be this dominant as he drops, 38 points against the Celtics. And then it stops. It was an adrenaline rush. It was a cool moment. And then it stops. Who's on the court who can really stop him? Now, the zone played a factor because they weren't able to have him post up, put his back to the basket, and he can't do his thing like he does at times. And that's where the coach comes into play and the players come into play, where they have to change up the game plan. They got to move around a little bit. They got to penetrate. They got to find a way to make it work. But as a whole, I'm not satisfied with Joel Embiid's game, no matter what his stat line says at the end. Minus 11 for Joel Embiid. He should never be a minus on the floor. Never, 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 never. He's the best player on the floor. He should never be a minus in a game. And that's why I look at Al Horford's night, and a lot of fans are disgusted with Al Horford as a whole. I can't believe we paid him. Once again, very reactionary to one game after he misses the three-pointer. Now all of a sudden it's, I can't believe we signed him. We've stated from the beginning as a fan base, you won't appreciate Al Horford's game until the playoffs because it's not flashy. It won't stand out. He just does the little things correctly. He was plus 21. In a 4-point game, he was plus 21. Don't tell me that Al Horford doesn't have an impact on the game when you look at his stat line. I just talked about how Joel Embiid's stat line can be very faulty, very similar to Al Horford. He was plus 21 in a 4-point game. You think he mattered? Tobias was strong as well in this one with 20 points, and he was on the plus side as well. Plus 16, I believe. Yeah, those two were the highest. Even for Ben, he was only plus 4. I think there's value in plus minus. Tobias Harris, after the game, said that they were like zombies out there in the second quarter defensively. How? How against the Miami Heat can you be zombies defensively? This is the team you should get up for. This is Jimmy Butler coming back. This is a good team in the Eastern Conference. Sleepwalking on defense? That's impossible stuff. That's something that doesn't even click into my head. It should never be a thing. Jimmy Butler had 14, 7, and 5. He didn't take over the game by any means, and the boos rained down on him, but he wasn't awful either, and he was the floor general late. This team was banged up. It wasn't as if they had their full go, and the Sixers still lost to them. And I love this praise of Eric Spoelstra, right? Because, why can't the Sixers get an Eric Spoelstra? He's won championships. Yeah, he's won championships with stud players in this league. Dwayne Wade in his prime, and Shaq, and LeBron James, and D. Wade, and Chris Bosh. Yes, when he had unbelievable superstar, best talent in the league type talent. Yes, he won championships. And I give him credit for going to the zone because it obviously frustrated the Sixers. But I saw a few times him draw up plays out of timeouts that literally resulted in nothing. One of them, they couldn't even inbound the ball. Now imagine if that was Brett Brown. Imagine if Brett Brown couldn't get the ball in out of a timeout. He would get roasted, destroyed, abused. Well, Eric Spoelstra, one of the coaches that everybody seems to praise, couple times in this game. Can't even get the ball in, one of them. Some ugly ones. Come on now, right? I mean, I'm just saying. I just find it hilarious how the narrative is completely different between the two head coaches. Eric Spoelstra, come on. What is he really? Mike Scott was awful. Josh Richardson was awful in the first half, but really came alive in the second and started knocking down threes. He's still really trying to figure it out. It's a shame because before he got hurt with that lingering injury, he was kind of cooking, and he was shredding guys. But ever since he came back from that injury, he's coming back slow and he's trying to figure it out. A game where the whole team played together too, huh? Finally we got a game where the whole team plays together and it wasn't good. It wasn't smooth. They didn't really flow. What do you know? What do you know? I thought it was interesting. One of the quotes Embiid had after the game mentioned how they were prepared for this zone, but they didn't do what they talked about. Huh. Okay. That's interesting. Who does that go on then? Does it go on Brett Brown for telling the team what to do and then the team not doing it? Here comes the comments. Well, that means the message is dry. Get rid of them. Or that just means you have players who are immature and young, not paying attention. It's just interesting. That's all. It's a very frustrating loss, and it doesn't sit well with me. Is it the end of the world? Absolutely not. It was somehow a 4-point game. The most embarrassing part of this is an NBA team lost to a banged-up Miami Heat squad who played zone. It's embarrassing to lose to a team in zone. Sometimes you just say, okay, it wasn't their game shooting-wise. And you're right, it wasn't. There were times where they struggled shooting the ball in that zone, and if it was another night, if they were to hit 3 more of those shots, only 3, it could have been a different outcome. They struggled shooting the ball. They had the wide open looks, and okay, but from there, that's when you need to adjust. If you realize the shots are not falling, you need to figure out a different way to do things. You can't just keep standing there and moving the ball around until it's open. You got to move. You got to find ways to create lanes. You got to break up that zone. You got to find ways to maybe get a shot from the foul line, which they did at times. Tobias Harris would get the ball around the free throw line and he would turn around and hit a quick jumper. But you got to find ways to break it. You can't just let them sink into that zone and force what they want to do. That's what they wanted to do. You allowed the opponent to execute what they wanted to execute all night long. And that's what doesn't sit right with me. So that's where we're at. They have the Dallas Mavericks on Friday. A back-to-back situation. Friday, Mavericks, and then Washington, D.C. on Saturday. So you got the Wizards and the Mavs coming up. Let's see how they respond to this loss. But it doesn't feel right. It doesn't sit right. I'm not okay with the way they played. At the end of the day, they lost, and they lost it in the second quarter, and they lost it in a really ugly way with not being able to break down a zone. I don't care how close it was. There's value in it, but it doesn't mean I'm satisfied. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for watching. Hit that thumbs up button, subscribe, and I will see you next time.